Greetings everyone, Sim Caesar here. Today I want to talk about the Flight 1 Cessna Citation Mustang, which is an add-on for Microsoft Flight Simulator and Lockheed Martin Prepared. Specifically, I want to talk about some stuttering problems that I've had with it and what I did to eliminate the stuttering. I don't want to say that I fixed the problem because technically it's not fixed, but I did find several workarounds that will completely eliminate the stuttering. You're probably thinking that's not the Citation Mustang on the screen right now. You are correct. This is a Beechcraft Baron. It's one of the default aircraft that come with Lockheed Martin Prepared, and the reason I have it loaded up is because I wanted to demonstrate the kind of performance that I'm getting from Prepared before we look at the Mustang. That way you kind of have a frame of reference to compare the two. So let's jump into the virtual cockpit here. Now it's downtown Chicago, dead ahead. I am sitting at Chicago Midway Airport. So what I'm going to do is use the mouse and just pan around the virtual cockpit very slowly and smoothly, and you can see everything's nice and smooth and getting good performance. I've got my frames locked at 60 frames per second, and I don't know if you can see the frame rate indicator at the top left. I don't know if that'll be legible on YouTube, but it's pretty much maxed out at 60 frames per second all the time here. So that's great. Now let's go ahead and load up the Flight One Mustang. There it is. Before I start talking about the stuttering problem, I want to point something out. You'll notice the co-pilot display is blank. A lot of people recommend turning off the co-pilot display. It increases overall performance with the Mustang. You do that by commenting one line out in the panel configuration file. I'm not going to detail how to do that here. You can Google Flight One Mustang, turn off co-pilot display, something like that, and get instructions on how to do it. I'm just pointing it out because I don't want someone to see that and think there's something amiss with my installation, which is not the case. What I'm going to do now is pan around the virtual cockpit with the mouse, exactly as I did with the Baron, and I'm moving the mouse, and as you can see, the screen is barely moving at all. Some of these stutters are lasting several seconds in length, and yeah, that's just horrible. There's no way you could hope to control the aircraft or have any fun at all with this thing. So before I get into talking about the stuttering issue, I very briefly want to talk about my history with the Flight One Mustang. Flight One released the Mustang, I believe, in 2009. I'm pretty sure about that. And the initial reports from people that first purchased it were that it was probably the most technologically advanced add-on in the history of Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it was also the most demanding in terms of the performance it required from your computer hardware. And only the best of the best systems could ever possibly hope to run it. It was definitely ahead of its time in multiple ways. I had a pretty good computer at the time. It was off-the-shelf Dell. I think it was about a year old, and it ran Microsoft Flight Simulator very well. I was overall very pleased with it, and I was very interested in this aircraft, so I decided to go ahead and purchase it anyway. And sure enough, it brought my system to its knees. I think I was maxing out at maybe 9 frames per second. So I asked Flight One for my money back, which they promptly refunded me. I have been a customer at Flight One for 14 years, and the customer service has always been excellent. And that is an unsolicited opinion by me. I guess I should mention that I am in no way connected to or affiliated with Flight One at all. I'm just a longtime satisfied customer. So, now fast forward to 2016, and Flight One announces they're releasing the Mustang for Prepared. I now have a much better computer than I had back then. The one I have now, I put together a couple months ago. It's got an i7 6700K processor overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz. It's got a GTX 980 Ti Hydra liquid-cooled graphics card and a bunch of other top-shelf components in it, so I figure, let's give the Mustang another try. So I purchased it, and I was very pleased. It ran very well on my system. It's still very demanding, but as you saw with the Beechcraft Baron, I was getting 60 frames per second with that, so, you know, I can afford to give up 20, 30 frames per second and still have a great experience, and that's kind of what has happened with the Mustang. So I was delighted, and I dove into it and started to learn the systems and take some flights from point A to point B, and I noticed that in some locations I was getting stuttering. In some cases, quite severe stuttering, as you saw just a couple of minutes ago. And then in other locations, very mysteriously, no stuttering at all. Everything was nice and smooth. In particular, on a flight from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, I noticed there was stuttering on the ground in Las Vegas. It wasn't so bad that I couldn't take off. So I did take off, and as I got away from Las Vegas, the stuttering slowly subsided. And when I was 15 or 20 miles away, the stuttering was completely gone. Everything was nice and smooth. So I continued on, and then as I got towards Ontario, which is kind of on the outskirts of Los Angeles over there, the stuttering came back and got very severe. And as I proceeded on, and as I got away from Ontario towards downtown Los Angeles, the stuttering went away. I landed at LAX, and there was no stuttering. So I was baffled, but I decided I wasn't going to ask for my money back this time. I really love this aircraft, and I'm going to see what I can figure out here. So I searched on Google to see if I could come up with an answer, and I couldn't find one. I did find other people talking about the identical problem, but nobody really had a solution to it. So my next instinct was to turn off my add-on scenery and to turn the detail sliders in the prepared settings all the way down to the minimum. And I did both of those things, and neither had any effect whatsoever. The stuttering was just as bad regardless of what scenery I was using or where the detail sliders were. So I noticed in my experimentation there that when I switched to the external view, there's no stuttering at all. Everything is very nice and smooth. So, and I also noticed that when I was in the virtual cockpit and I shut down the aircraft, there was no stuttering again. So both of those things got me thinking the stuttering must be related to the G1000 somehow. So I started playing around with the G1000, and I discovered the cause of the problem. I'm going to bring up the center display here, the multifunction display, or MFD as I will call it from this point forward. And you see all these red Christmas trees all over the place? Those are obstacle markers. They tell you where there is a tall building or a cell phone tower, something like that. They're red now because the obstacles pose a hazard. As you clear the top of them, they turn yellow, and then when they pose no danger, they turn gray. Those obstacle indicators are what's causing the problem. The more of those you have on the screen at the same time, the worse stuttering you're going to get. So I set out to figure out a way to turn those off, and I came up with 3 different ways to turn those off. 2 of them involve settings within the G1000 itself. I could not find a setting within the G1000 to turn off only the obstacle markers. If somebody knows how to do that, please post a comment. It will pretty much nullify the rest of this video, but it would be easier than the method I'm going to describe. Before I show you how to do that, let me go over to the primary flight display, or PFD. And there we go. Now you see this map down here, that's the inset map, and there is such a high concentration of those obstacle markers, it looks like the land here is just one solid sheet of red. First thing I'm going to do is just turn off the inset map altogether. You do that by clicking the inset soft key and then clicking off. Now the inset map is gone, and look what's happened to the stuttering. Much improved. I can actually go from left to right. I mean, there's definitely still some stuttering there, but I can actually go from left to right and look at things now. It's probably a third of what it was before. So great. Now let's bring the MFD back up here again, and there's a couple ways from within the G1000 that you can turn off those obstacle markers. I'm going to bring up the keypad here, and the first way is to zoom out to a level that the obstacle markers no longer appear. I'm at 50 nautical miles zoom right now, so I'm going to hit the range button here and zoom out one more. Now we're at 80 nautical miles. You see all of the obstacle markers are gone. And now let me zoom around the virtual cockpit. And voila, no stuttering whatsoever. Everything is nice and smooth. There we go. Now, let's see, let's bring this up again. There is a second way. Let me zoom back in so they reappear. There's a second way to do this, and that's using the declutter option. You hit the declutter button a couple of times, so it's at level 2. And again, the stuttering is gone. There we go. Now back on the PFD, I turned off the inset map. Let me bring it back up. You can do the same thing with the inset map. You hit inset, and then there's the declutter option right down here, and hit that a couple of times. That turns off the obstacle indicators, and everything's smooth again. Now let me bring them back up, and the you can zoom out. The range knob is over here. Let me just zoom out one. There we go. And stuttering gone. With the inset map, I just leave it off all the time. I think I might get an extra frame or two per second with the inset map on. I don't use it, so I don't see any reason to leave it turned on, but it's up to you. You know, if you want to leave it turned on, you can do that. If not, leave it turned off. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that I consider these workarounds and not true fixes. For example, you know, when you go to declutter level 2, you're not only turning off the obstacle indicators, you're turning off other information, like the airspace boundaries. And I like to have those. So there is a third method that I've come up with that will disable only the obstacle indicators and leave all the other information intact. It's a little more complicated than the other two methods, not particularly difficult. It requires editing one of the database files for the G1000. I'm going to bring back the obstacle markers here so they'll be visible when we come back. There we go. And let's see, zoom back in here. Okay. Now, to edit the database file for the G1000, you need to bring up a File Explorer window. I hope you can see this. I hope it's legible on YouTube. I'll try to narrate what I'm doing in case you can't see it. I am going to try to zoom in on this when I edit the video. My video editing skills are kind of primitive, so if it doesn't look right, I apologize in advance, but I will narrate it, so hopefully you can follow along. You need to find the installation folder for your flight simulator, whether it's prepared or Microsoft Flight Simulator. Where it's installed depends on where you specified it to be installed. I think the default location is on the C drive in the Program Files x86 folder. If you installed it in there, you may have to jump through a couple of extra Windows security hoops to accomplish what I'm going to show you how to do. It usually just pops up a window and says you need to grant administrator privileges to do this. I will leave it up to you to figure all that out. You should still be able to accomplish this with just require a little, like I said, a couple extra hoops to jump through. I have it installed on my D drive, so I don't have to worry about that stuff. Anyway, find the folder, open it up, and we've got a bunch of folders and files in here. The one we want is the Gauges folder. Open that one up, and more folders and files. The one we want this time is the Flight1 _ Garmin G1000 _ AUX folder. There is a Flight1 _ Mustang folder here. That's not the one we want. We want the one that has the Garmin G1000 _ AUX in the title. So open that up, and now the file we are interested in is this one. It's called F1G1000 underscore obstacles dot DAT. Okay, once you've located that file, click on it and then right-click on it and choose Rename. Now when you do that, Windows will select the file name but not the extension. We want to select the whole thing. So do Select All by hitting Control-A. That selects the entire thing, including the file extension. And now hit Control-C to copy. You may want to hit Control-C 2 or 3 times just to make sure it registers correctly, because it's critical that you copy that file name exactly as it is. So once you've done that, we need to rename this file. Rename it something that will allow you to easily change it back to the original file name should you wish to restore this. And I'm going to do that by just clicking next to the word obstacles and typing the number 2. There we go. And hitting enter. So now I can just remove that 2 that I previously entered if I want to restore the original file. The next thing we need to do, move the mouse down here where there are no files, right-click and select a new, and then text document. So again, Windows will select the file name but not the extension. We hit Control-A and then Control-V, and that should paste the file name that we previously copied. And look at it and ensure everything's correct. It does have the .dat at the end. And if everything looks good, hit enter. Windows will ask you if you want to change the file name extension. You do. And now we've basically got an obstacles database file that is completely blank. Now I tried to do this by simply renaming the original obstacles data file and not creating the blank one. That did not work. Prepared crashed when I tried to load the Mustang. So you do need this blank obstacle file. So let's go back over here to Prepared, and I'm going to reload the Mustang. And the Mustang's already selected, so I just click OK. That will reload the Mustang and all of the database and software and everything. And as you can see, when I did that, all the obstacles have disappeared. All the other data is there except for the obstacles, and everything is just nice and smooth as can be. This is absolutely my preferred way to deal with this problem, because I don't care about the obstacles. I mean, if you fly this airplane the way it's supposed to be flown, you're going to be flying IFR, and even if you're flying VFR, I mean, if you're flying it in such a way that you're in constant danger of running into cell phone towers, you know, you're probably not looking at the MFD to see where the obstacles are anyway. So we're just going to leave it at that. Now, my next step here is I'm going to go to Flight 1 and tell them about my findings and see if there's anything to do that they can do to fix it. I don't know if they can. You know, this piece of software is 7 years old, and I don't know what it would involve to fix it. So you could still have the obstacles displaying but not have the stuttering. Maybe it's not possible. Maybe it's technically possible but not economically viable to make all those changes. I don't know. I can certainly live without those obstacles, and I'm extremely happy with this Mustang the way it is. I've got to say, this is a great aircraft. I'm usually not a jet person. I'm making air quotes when I say that. I usually like piston singles and piston twins. The Mustang is kind of like a jet for people that don't like jets. It handles wonderfully. You can hand fly this as easily as you can hand fly a Cessna Skylane or something. It's just a fun airplane to fly. One of the things I don't like about jets and even turboprops is that you're constantly trying to stay ahead of the aircraft in terms of engine management. You have to be careful on takeoff. You don't overspeed the engines, and you have to be careful when you're flying below 10,000. You don't bust the 250 knot speed limit, or you don't overspeed the aircraft. With the Mustang, you don't have to worry about any of that. All the throttles are completely computer controlled by something called a FADEC, and it takes care of everything. When you want to take off, you just push the throttles all the way forward, It manages everything for you. As soon as you take off and gear up, you move them back to the climb setting. It manages the climb, and when you get to cruise, you move it back to the cruise setting, and the computer will automatically give you the optimum power that you can get for maximum cruise. It's wonderful. Now, if this video helped you, please leave a comment. I'd really like to hear from you. I'm not sure everybody has this stuttering issue. Maybe some people fly in areas where it doesn't happen and they just haven't noticed it. I do know that there are people in the Flight One Mustang forums that are talking about the identical issue that I've described here, so I do hope it helps someone. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. There's not very much here yet. It's kind of new, but I am planning to feature the Mustang in a future video. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.